Let's be honest, when things are going badly in game, we all express our frustrations differently.
Fazer essa né, filha da puta! Filha da puta! Filha da puta! Ah, mano! Your mom is fat! Fat hoe!
But rage isn't something that's bound by borders and languages. And if you've ever shared a gaming lobby with Russian-speaking players, you've probably experienced that firsthand.
Ёбаный шакал, ебало свое закрой, собака ебаная.
Ты можешь, блядь, опять
Хуй!
Why you don't check me the fucking up?
Чертов нубас, траханный пидорас, блядь, не стал жрать этого, блядь.
Maybe it's the result of decades of political tomfoolery, or being expected to out-wrestle bears at the age of 5, but to our ultra-competitive, Kremlin-ruled comrades, Counter-Strike isn't just a game. It's an outlet. Although this complaint appears to be nothing more than an anecdotal generalization, it's hard to deny just how widespread this characterization has become over the past 15 years. And perhaps the most iconic tie to this stereotype is one vulgar phrase in particular.
Сука! Блядь!
Мне сейчас сука, блядь, сука.
Блядь! Сука, блядь!
Сука! Блять, пердак порвала нахуй!
Excuse me? A baking powder?
Cyka Blyat has been part of the Russian language for hundreds of years, so it's nearly impossible to pinpoint its exact origin. For all we know, it might have begun in the 1600s as an onomatopoeia for especially violent sneezes, or as a common reaction in Moscow bathhouses to those who were less encumbered. What we do know, however, is that Cyka Blyat rose to prominence alongside Counter-Strike in the early 2000s. But what the hell does it even mean? Well, a direct English translation leads to a number of different, awkward-sounding unpleasantries. But according to political scientist Seva Gunitsky, it's not actually that straightforward.
Well, the first thing to know is that Americans actually mispronounce it.
Cyka Blyat!
It's not блядь with a T, it's блядь with a D.
Cyka Blyat?
There is really no one translation. Essentially, it's almost a placeholder for whenever somebody is angry. It can mean anything from to what the fuck to holy shit, I can't believe this happened. It can even mean something positive, like I can't believe I just did that, I'm so happy. So it's kind of a universal placeholder for whatever emotion the player is feeling at the moment.
Context, then, is absolutely crucial to understanding the use of Cyka Blyat. And in Counter-Strike, while variations of the phrase are occasionally used to express euphoria,
Вот это, сука, эйс, блядь, поехали!
more often than not, it's a way to aggressively articulate frustration.
Отъебись ты от меня, ёбаный ты кусок говна, блядь! Блядь, ну сука, да ёб твою, да ты заебал меня, блядь, конченый кусок говна тупого, блядь!
So why has Cyka Blyat risen as the mantra for Russian players? Well, it might have to do with Mot, the flexible slang system from which it derives.
The elegant thing about mat is because every part of speech is conjugated, you can give a shade of really detailed nuance to every swear word. So there's different ways, you can say fuck in like 100 different ways, and each one has a slightly different meaning, which means you can have a very rich vocabulary of swearing.
To put it in perspective, you know how we think we have a lot of synonyms for penis in English? That's nothing compared to Russians, who have upwards of 1,200 at their disposal.
That's one too many.
But why do we encounter so many raging Russians in matchmaking? Well, it might be down to the fact that they're probably Counter-Strike's most neglected player base. Think about it. All the major countries and regions where CSGO is actively played have pretty reliable internet connections and dozens of their own localized dedicated servers. All of them, except for Russia. Sadly for our Ruski brethren, they're forced to matchmake on servers way the fuck over in Sweden.
English, Swedish meatball.
With your closest dedicated server being potentially thousands of miles away, you're likely to have terrible lag or shitty ping. And for Counter-Strike, that's a surefire trigger for losing your mind.
блядь, заткнись нахуй, сука, тупая мать твою, ебал, пидорас, ебучий сын тупорылый.
On top of latency problems and the obvious language barrier they're bound to face with Swedish matchmaking, Russian players are often dropped into NA or other EU servers, where they might run into this.
Can you fucking speak English?
Я стараюсь говорить по-английски.
Please talk in English. Another fucking Russian on our team.
Нет, нет, нет.
Fucking
Putin.
Even if you're well behaved and uninhibited by lag, chances are you'll still be mocked because of cultural stereotypes perpetuated by the dregs of your region. That's enough to make anyone a bit salty, right?
fuck you.
So why doesn't Valve do anything to help these displaced players? Creating a dedicated server for Russian players that's actually in Russia makes a lot of sense. Dota 2 has one after all, so why not CS? To find out, we contacted Valve for an explanation, and this is what they had to say. Although Cyka Blyat started as standard slang within the Russian CS community, its popularity as a tool for ridiculing this player group really took off in 2015 and 2016, after a number of compilations and music videos went viral.
Сука, 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 блядь, сука, 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 блядь, сука, 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 блядь, сука, 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 блядь.
With these videos being watched by millions of people all over the world, the meme was catapulted into the esports and streaming spotlight. But Cyka Blyat's reach extended beyond Counter-Strike and ingrained itself within Russia's now dwindling, hard base obsessed Gopnik culture.
I think the best way to understand it is it's the Russian equivalent of chavs in England. It is a subculture of young men usually wearing Adidas tracksuits, and if they make a bit of money, a leather jackets, and they have cheap cigarettes and they're drinking cheap vodka and they're doing the Slavic squat around the steps of an apartment building. It's kind of faded a bit since its heydays of the 90s and 2000s, but it's still very much a residual subculture in Russia.
Now, as much as I hate to admit it, this scene has produced some absolute bangers.
Village boys и диджей, блядь, он разрывают ваши хаты, да нам просто поебать, скажем вместе, сука, блядь.
His biggest thing in Europe, bro. He's best in Europe, bro.
And even though Gopnik culture isn't as prevalent as it once was, the opposite is true of Cyka Blyat, which regularly features during CSGO broadcasts.
The scout comes out once again. The M4 still in play, the pistols as well. I hope you can hear that at home.
There we go.
Feels like I'm back in matchmaking, Jesus Christ.
You hear what they're saying?
That's a new one.
Cyka Blyat is both a semi-harmless phrase that evokes laughter over the aggressive use of a foreign language and a gross generalization of a culture that doesn't entirely fit that mold. But how does it impact those that it's come to represent?
Some people in Russia might be offended, but I can't imagine there are that many of them. I think they would probably see it as a silly thing that the West borrowed and uses. And I don't think there's any protests in Russia about the cultural appropriation of Cyka Blyat. That doesn't seem to me a particularly potent tool with which to attack Russian players. If nothing else, I think Russian players are more amused by this adoption. And yeah, of course, there's a lot of racism and xenophobia within some games, but I don't feel like there's a specific anger attached to Russian players as opposed to American or any other players. I think that seems to be a part of the wider gaming subculture as far as I can tell.
And joining me now to discuss this meme is my Russian colleague Dmitry Paskaluda, who's currently stationed in Moscow. Dmitry, try to put into words how you feel about Cyka Blyat.
For sure, Miles. Let me just start by that Cyka Blyat.
Sorry, we can't hear you. You're cutting out.
Fucking Russian man! Don't play with fucking Russia!
Classic Russian response to a bad internet connection, eh, Matt?
We're still live, Miles.
For all we know. And then I'll read the rest.
Yeah, background noise.
Oh, really? Fucking hell, man. Get on your bike and fuck off. In it.
Take a drink of water because it sounds
Oh, getting a bit chalky, eh? Getting a bit chalky in here with the Kremlin, you know what I'm saying? But why do we encounter so many raging Russians in matchmaking? Well, it might be down to the fact that they're bastards. Fuck. I fucked that up.